Hi. Okay. So my cultural background and cultural language and experience I've had. My cultural background is I'm Puerto Rican. I grew up, born and raised in Puerto Rico. And my cultural and language experience that I've had is I was taught Spanish. Spanish is the principal language of Puerto Rico, and English is the second language. Um, Spanish in Puerto Rico is taught throughout school, and English, when I went to school from 78 to 1990 at least, it was taught at different levels. If you went to a public school, it is definitely different, the level and I would say the quality of English. I went, thankfully, to a private school, so all of my classes from kindergarten, first and second were taught in Spanish by Puerto Rican teachers. And English was just the basic alphabet and pronunciation. And the Puerto Rican teacher was the one to teach English. However, from third grade through 12th grade, you were taught in my private school, you were taught by an American teacher, meaning they did not know any Spanish at all. So that forced you to have to speak in English, and also that you had to write in English and communicate in English. Then the only class that was in Spanish would be the Spanish class given by a Puerto Rican teacher. So I remember the Spanish teacher coming to class to visit the classroom, and then we will have our Spanish session. From third grade on, all books were also in English, and let's see what else. Yeah, so that's it. Let's see. Question number 2. How was language approach in your school? I think I answered that one. Yeah, so books were all in English, and that accounted for math, science, social studies. They were all in English. You will have to take or communicate with the teacher in English. And let's see. Did you use either languages or just one? At school, I would use English with the teacher. I would use Spanish with my friends, and I will use Spanish at home. Um, at home also, we had from 1986. I think I was in ninth grade, I believe, is when we got cable TV. So from that point on, we began to also watch English TV in my home. Prior to that, they were just Spanish channels, and the Spanish channels were dubbed in Spanish. So we saw the Dukes of Hazzard, we saw all the American shows, but they were dubbed in Spanish. So I think that they did those in Mexico or in Spain. Um, let's see. Did you use either languages or just one? Yeah. My dad was from St. Thomas. We spoke to him in Spanish as well, but he understood English was his primary language. So even though we could speak to him in English or in Spanish, we prefer to speak to him in Spanish. Let's see. Anywhere else? Because you mentioned here the store. All of that was in Spanish. If I wanted to speak something in secret with my friends, or something that I knew that the people around me, they might not know as much English, I would use English. Just use it as a secondary language or as a code language, if you might have to call it that. Question number 3. What challenges to communication do you think you have faced? I'm gonna say reading comprehension. And I'm gonna say that challenges to communication. I would have to say the slang, the English slang, is at times difficult. And when I say slang, it's just innuendos. Um, Comedies, English comedies, I don't get them as well. I do get the comedy, let's say, from Conan O'Brien or Ellen DeGeneres, and I think it's because they incorporate the body language into it. But comedians like Jay Leno or Johnny Carson, when he was alive, I would not get those at all. Um, let's see. But communication oh, I'm gonna say the accent. If I go to the South, the accent, it tends to be a bit of a barrier because I have a hard time understanding what the people are saying. I'm gonna say if the person also talks rapid, fast English to me, I have to ask them to repeat it, just because it takes me a while um, to figure out where is it that they're coming from. Uh, Number 4. What languages do you know and when did you learn them? Okay, I think I said Spanish and English, and I began to learn English since kindergarten, and then from third grade on, then it was mostly English, but speech and maintained itself in Spanish at within friends at school and everywhere else. How long have you been speaking each language? Um, Fluently speaking Spanish since I was little. I'm gonna say fluent speaking English. Let's say fourth grade, fifth grade, maybe. And I spoke those languages to my teachers. If I traveled, I before I moved to the U.S., if I traveled, I was the translator because some of my friends, like I said, they went to public school, so their English was not the best, so they didn't feel as confident as me. Um, of course, I had only communicated with my teacher, so at times I would get a bit nervous. But whenever we would go to a McDonald's or whatnot, then I would get to order for them. What topics do we talk about in each language? I'm gonna say anything. Daily life topics, family topics. What tends to happen now when I visit Puerto Rico is that I tend to forget a couple of words here and there. So my mom notes a bit of English. I can say she can definitely communicate. So she has to remind me ever so often some Spanish words that I tend to forget. Do you miss the two languages? Oh yes, especially when I visit Puerto Rico. I tend to speak Spanglish or I'm gonna say it has to do with the communication. If I go to visit the church where I grew up in, which was in Spanish, and if my mom gives me something to read, which is gonna be in Spanish, or to fix her cell phone or iPad, which I have changed the language to Spanish, I have to change it to English because I'm used to the terminology in English, and it's a bit hard for me to decipher what it means. Also, I count in Spanish, and when it comes to instructions to build something or put something together, I prefer English. English, like if I think the terminology and the tools, the names are not the same. Um, and I guess I got used to reading instructions in English. I'm gonna say to that? Um, let's see. When you mix the two languages, what are you talking? Who are you talking to? I am, I am talking to when I mix them, I tend to talk to my brother. I also tend to talk English to my niece and nephews. Um, my brother and my sister-in-law, they're both Puerto Rican, but they speak English to their kids. Their kids don't know Spanish, they, so I get to talk to them in English. When I speak to my brother, it's both half Spanish, half English. Um, when I speak to my brothers, I'm gonna say that is in Spanish, and to the rest of my family as well. So last one. Do you feel different depending on what language you are speaking? It has, I'm not gonna say that I feel different. I'm gonna say that I have embraced more my culture now that I don't live there and that I go there to visit. At times I do miss speaking in Spanish, and I also equate language to culture. So every chance that I get to speak Spanish, and you have seen that I talk to some of your classmates of the urban teaching tutor in Spanish. So every chance that I get to speak Spanish, I really try to make a good use of it. It makes me feel close to my culture, so call it nostalgia. And describe, if you can, how you feel when you speak each language. When I speak English here, it's part of the flow. I'm gonna say it's part of my job, and it's just part of what the environment is like. So I'm gonna say it's not like I feel any different. It's just what is spoken. So you have to adapt to your environment, and language is something that is part of the environment. I think that I would feel definitely even more different if it would have to be a different language. If I could speak Spanish here, I definitely would. Um, but when I get to Puerto Rico, it just feels like home. It feels effortless because I don't have to decode as much, or I don't have to figure out what does this person mean. And sometimes it has to do with innuendos, or when they say something that they joke on, or rap music. Um, I I don't understand rap music because they just speak the English language too fast for me to be able to decode it. So I'm gonna say that the communication factor. Um, I would say that I do have a strong English background. Do I still think in Spanish in some ways, like in math? But English has become a bigger part of me just because I've been here for 14 years. So, do I feel any different culturally? I'm gonna say no. Like I said, I feel that I have embraced my culture even more, and mostly because I tend to miss it, especially in the winter time. So I hope it helps, and if you have any other questions, just let me know. All right, bye bye.